Howdy folks, Donal here again. Today I'm going to talk about how we go about landing a job within FinOps. So we've spoken about what FinOps is, we've given an overview of the cloud, and now we're going to go into the practicalities of how do you actually get into this field, how do you get a role here. So to do that, what I'm going to talk about first is what are the different roles within FinOps. So there's different types of specs, different titles. So I'll give you a rough guide as to what those mean. Then I'm going to talk about the different types of certifications that are there. So whether that be the FinOps Foundation or the cloud providers, these certifications and skills will give anyone reading your CV or your profile a view that you know the basics of what's going on. So this would get you in the door for the interview. Then I'm going to talk about the relevant experience. So you might be working in finance or a field such as that currently, but there are a lot of core skills performed within that function which translate quite nicely to FinOps. So I'm going to kind of talk about those kind of skills that you might want to develop to put yourself in a better frame for when you are, if you do get to interview, that you can say, I've worked on this transferable skill and this is how it would apply to FinOps. So first off, FinOps jobs. The first section that you'll see will be FinOps analyst. So that might be junior, senior, FinOps analyst, manager. This title generally tends to be for someone from a finance background as a broad rule of thumb. Second off, then you would have FinOps engineers. So this is more for people with a technical background. So your DevOps or your software engineers. So they would be from a coding and building applications point of view, and now they'd just be going to drive the optimization in the code would be aiming at these kind of roles at a very high level. And then you have FinOps practitioner, and this is kind of a catch-all to catch kind of everyone else. So that's IT asset managers, software asset managers, and technology business managers as well. So these people have an element of technical, so they sit inside the IT org, but they're not as technical in terms of building the applications as the engineering folk. There is a really useful jobs board on the FinOps Foundation, and I've linked it here, and I'll put a link in the show notes. There you can filter on useful things such as region, where do you want, remote, hybrid, in office, and you get a feel for the type of roles that are out where they are, and just by reading the so first off, we'll start old school with a book. So there is a Cloud FinOps book. It's an O'Reilly book. There's a second version got released there recently. It's 62 bucks. I put a link here. Again, I'll put the link in the notes below. Hands up, I've not bought this book. I've bought work-related books before, and I just haven't got the use out of them. But depending on your learning style, maybe it's something you'd like to take, digest, make notes on, use your tabs, highlight, or whatever floats your boat. So that's an option. Then there's the FinOps practitioner certification. So the FinOps Foundation has a couple of different certifications. And as you get more familiar with the IT side of the house, everything is a certification. You get a certification for everything. And this is just how the FinOps practitioner is a base certification there. By doing this, you will get access to the FinOps frameworks that are in place. So how to FinOps and some guides on what to do. You'll also get access to the FinOps community Slack channel, which is a really good resource you can introduce yourself. You can there you can join maybe a working group. I myself am just finishing up contributing to my first working group. It's really worthwhile exercise. You get to know people in the community, and even if you're starting off and you don't have a deep knowledge of how it's actually done, even being in the room or the virtual room will give you a good flavor for the kind of challenges people face, and you can build that connection as well. To get this certification, There is a self-paced course, which is just shy of $600, and then there's a certification exam, which is $300. The FinOps Foundation, to be fair to them, do call out on their website that you don't necessarily need to have done the course to take the exam. Once you have a base understanding of the FinOps principles and frameworks and foundations, you should be okay to pass the exam. And that's kind of stuff that I'm going to cover over the next couple of weeks. So hopefully to get you exam prepped and ready would be one of the things there. They also have a program for students or for people who might need some support who wouldn't necessarily have their company paying for it. So there is some programs around that where you can apply to do it free of charge. So that's worth checking out also. Then you have the cloud provider based certifications. These are really worth, even if you don't get the certification, it's worth doing the trainings because you get familiar with the language that is spoken when you're talking about the cloud. I've got a list here of the various base certifications, and I've covered the three main hyperscalers there with AWS, Azure, and GCP. Similar prices again, and I would note that on occasion they can have sales, so they might be 50% off the price of doing the exam and stuff like that. So it is worth keeping an eye out for those. Of these trainings, I've actually done the AWS certified cloud practitioner one. I've actually watched it 2 or 3 times. It's a really good training. I've been around the block a while and I've done a number of trainings that aren't hectic, but this one is really good. It's kind of mixed media. You've kind of got a presenter, you've got some written language, you've got questions throughout. It's really well structured. They use a really good analogy of a coffee shop to explain the cloud and some of the cloud concepts, which I found really useful when I was learning the basics. I've also looked at the cloud one, or the Google one, and the Azure one briefly, and it looks to be similar material. It's just specific to the services that they have on their clouds. So different cloud providers will call the same things something slightly different. So it's just using the language for the different clouds. So where do you go all the way as far as getting certified or not? I definitely recommend checking out the trainings for the cloud providers. So getting your certifications and getting your understanding there will build your CV to get your base, get you in the door. Then it's the relevant experience is what will really stand to you when you're talking to a hiring manager. One of the things I touched on previously was joining the FinOps working group. So as I mentioned, you mightn't have anything material to contribute, but getting familiar with the terminology being used. I find anytime I'm on one of these calls, I'm making notes and I'm kind of Googling stuff afterwards just to figure out what was being said and to understand it a bit more. So you'll always pick something up. They're well worth joining. And there's not a massive expectation, like even coming from a non-technical background, reviewing stuff so that someone from that perspective can understand some documentation is valuable also. There's also a piece here where you can develop transferable skills. So a lot of skills that are used within finance and that I used in my career before moving into FinOps, I find I lean on a lot in the day-to-day of FinOps. One is data storytelling. So in finance, you might have a month-on-month variance analysis or a quarterly board pack where you're communicating data and you're looking for people to take action. It's the exact same thing within FinOps. Instead of speaking to a certain business unit or a general manager, you're speaking to an engineering team or an engineering lead. But it's the same concept. You're trying to communicate that data. What are the 3 or 4 things that they need to know out of all the data that relates to their business unit? That's what you're trying to do. I suppose I should have put these in reverse order. The analytics piece is about getting that insight, and then the storytelling is the communicating it. So the two kind of go hand in glove together. And applying business context is very important as well. Like we could read the numbers and get lost in them, but we need to take a step back and say, what does this number actually mean? So for example, if a company's cloud spend is spiking at a certain period of time, maybe that's because they've had a big sale, so there's a lot of traffic being driven to their website or their systems, which is driving that spike in usage. And being able to explain that or talk about that in an intelligent way and giving that context is really important. Um, Stakeholder management is another key piece. As we've discussed previously, FinOps sits between kind of sourcing, IT, and finance. So you have to be aware of all those stakeholders' wants and needs. It's the same within the finance or the business function. Whether you're a business analyst or an accountant, you have a number of people that you report your output into, and you want to make sure that you stay connected with them, like what's going on in their business unit, what information are you providing that helps them to work better, what additional analysis would make their decision making more effective. Those kind of things are really transferable into FinOps. Then the last piece is, you might think, okay, that's all great. I'll build my transferable skills. I'll join the working group, but I've not seen the cloud. I haven't got in to look around and click the buttons. Well, if you speak to, if you look in your org and look for maybe the IT business partner, they'd be probably more than willing to share some information about what cloud provider you're using. And if you kind of again show the skills that you've done already, maybe there might be an opportunity to assist them in what they're trying to do. Sourcing are always keen to speak to finance, to especially around the time of a renewal, to get an understanding of the forecast and the commitment and the budget that's going to be there going forward. So partnering with them on that exercise would be really useful, because you'll be speaking to engineering teams to get an understanding of their pipeline of workloads, which will drive their spend. So it gets you in that realm and hearing that language. And the IT team themselves, if you do have any contacts, or if you're familiar with anyone there, just ask. People are generally really good to share their knowledge and their experience. So, and then I'm just on resources. So kind of to summarize, there I've laid out the FinOps, the types of jobs that there are within FinOps. Then I've spoken about the certifications and the different bits you can get involved in to build a knowledge base. And then I've talked about gaining relevant experience. So what is a relevant skill that will transfer to FinOps? Like say, I'll hope to have another one out next week. Any questions or comments or anything you want me to elaborate on, just leave a comment below, and I'll figure it out and get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you very much.